The Bond franchise is one of my favorites. I think it's definitely my favorite action series. Though there are some action movies that could be argued as better, none of them have 25 movies that are all enjoyable. So this list is to show love to a series that I've been a fan of since I was a kid, that I was first exposed to with the game Everything or Nothing, the best James Bond game ever made. But it's also an underrated gem from the PlayStation 2 era that probably won't ever get a remake, but it deserves one. So anyway, this franchise and these movies have been a big part of my childhood, and I'm still a fan, so clearly it's very important to leave a good first impression. And the Bond movies do a good job of this, and here are some honourable mentions. Casino Royale, we see Bond in black and white, which shows the origins of this series, as the original Casino Royale, not the parody, the original was in black and white. We can tell that this is going to be a darker film, as we see a flashback of Bond's first kill, where he half drowns a guy and then shoots him. The flashback comes right after killing his second victim. Next is Goldfinger, seeing Bond in the black outfit, which he is wearing or something similar to, in two of the movies on this list, so there's a hint. Anyway, he uses a grapple hook, takes out a guard, then plants some kind of explosive, then goes back to the party where he detonates the explosive while lighting a cigarette. It's about as Bond as it gets. He also kills someone by throwing a fan into a bathtub. Plus, the way Connery says the one-liner, "shocking," is great. Thunderball. Bond attends his own funeral, then fights an assassin disguised as a woman. Bond kills him, throwing some flowers on the guy, meant for Bond, and then he escapes with a jetpack to his car, which has a bulletproof barrier that protects him from a hail of bullets. All of those are great, but they just miss out on the list. So anyway, here are the top 5 Bond openings. Number 5, From Russia with Love. The second Bond movie, but the first to have a pre-title sequence. It's short and sweet for a Bond opening. It's got this mysterious, almost creepy vibe, like this is a thriller or something. It's a perfect showing of stealth between two spies sneaking around in a maze until Bond is strangled with a wire that comes out of a watch. So we are given a glimpse of the gadgets of the villains, who of course are Soviets, but of course it's not actually Bond who is strangled, but some other agent. So Soviets do take their tests very seriously. This is a great way to set up your villain, even though it's not him, showing the villain kill your protagonist in some kind of metaphorical way, to show the threat that the character faces. All of this helps to cement Grant as one of the best Bond villains. Number 4, Tomorrow Never Dies. This is another high-action Bond opening. What solidifies this one, though, other than just the explosions and the action, is the urgency. It starts with Bond taking pictures as evidence of an arms deal in some kind of base where they are selling these weapons, and so they decide to destroy this base with a missile from a naval vessel that they have in the area. So none of these weapons can ever be used. That is until they notice that one of the jets is carrying a nuclear missile, and so the plan changes. Bond is supposed to leave, but of course, since it's Bond, he has to save the day. And so he has to hijack the jet so that the nuke doesn't go off. It goes back and forth between the missile shot from the naval vessel as it travels towards the target, passing mountains rapidly, adding to the urgency of the mission. Bond manages to escape the explosion, but is being strangled from the back seat as another jet tries to destroy them. But he pulls the ejector seat that flies into the other jet. Bond kills 2 birds with 1 stone, or at least 1 seat anyway. Number 3, The Living Daylights. Now, The Living Daylights isn't my favourite of the 2 Timothy Dalton movies, but I still like it. One thing that can't be argued against, though, is that this has the better opening. Both movies are different, but this one is more interesting, starting with some kind of war games to test to see if MI6 agents can perform well on a mission, but this turns into an assassination of an MI6 agent as he is scaling down the mountainside when his line is cut. Bond chases the assassin by jumping on top of a car and fighting him. The explosives in the back of the car are set on fire. The two fight until the car goes off the road. towards the ocean when Bond pulls his parachute and the assassin explodes in the car. Bond lands on the yacht saying the famous line and then fucks the woman who owns it. It's a great way to introduce Timothy Dalton's Bond, a high-action Bond that also is serious and actions have some weight. They're darker and more realistic, but it's still Bond, a charismatic and charming character who fucks. Number 2, Die Another Day. I know this one is a controversial pick, but it has to be one of, if not the first Bond scenes I ever saw, so this one has been ingrained in my head for years. That's not to say that this is just nostalgia, though. It does have CGI in the water, I think, but it's not that noticeable. Anyway, it starts with Bond sneaking into North Korea from the sea. He then disguises himself as a black market dealer, I guess, trying to sell diamonds. But Bond puts C4 in the suitcase filled with the diamonds. It cuts to the villain hitting the heavy bag. He then opens the heavy bag and a guy falls out, which is a pretty cool way to torture someone, I guess. Bond gets made almost immediately with some kind of facial identity. Bond detonates the C4, sending the diamonds into the face of the henchman. It then turns into a huge action scene with Bond fighting on the back of a hovercraft where he has to dodge a flamethrower as landmines explode around them. The fight ends with the hovercraft going off the edge of a waterfall, but then Bond is captured and tortured for 14 months in the scenes that follow after the opening. The first 30 odd minutes of this movie are actually pretty great, showing Bond as a POW until he is traded for the henchmen that the MI6 have captured. It's a good concept that would have fit the more serious Bonds like Dalton and Craig. It's too bad that the rest of the movie is disappointing. The cars at the end are pretty good though.
Saved by the bell.
And so, number 1 is of course Goldeneye. If From Russia with Love is a great way to set up your villain, then Goldeneye is a great way to reintroduce a protagonist. It might be the best introduction to the main character of any of these movies, with the exception of Dr. No. We know who Bond is, but this is the first time we've seen Pierce Brosnan's Bond. We don't see his face initially. From the back he looks like Timothy Dalton, so someone we're familiar with. But him scaling down the side of the giant wall and then cutting a hole to enter with a laser, we know we've entered a new era of Bond. We then see his eyes and then the shadow of his whole face as he looms over a guy taking a shit. We do finally see his face when he gives us his first one line, "Sorry, forgot to knock," right before punching a guy right in the face.
Beg your pardon, forgot to knock.
We also introduced to 006, one of the most underrated characters, who is soon after killed, or so we think. Bond manages to escape the facility by riding a motorbike off the edge of a cliff and then getting into the falling plane and leveling it out right before the plane hits the side of a mountain. I just realized that 3 out of 5 of these Bond openings had a cliff and vehicles falling off of it. So if you want to know how to spot a great Bond opening, that's how. So if you're also a fan of Bond movies and you like this video, or you just like vodka martinis that are shaken and not stirred, then like and subscribe and share this video around.